Well, hello, friends, and welcome to another Truetone Lounge. Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Ray Flacke.
Mm.
Ray, yeah, Ray made a huge impact on the Nashville scene when he arrived in the late '70s, and through his work with Ricky Skaggs and Jamie Hartford and Kathy Mattea and Marty Stuart and all sorts of session work, and just his unique playing style that was unlike kind of what anyone else was doing at the time. You know, where a lot of guys were using light gauge strings and with with a light touch, and Ray and Ray came on the scene with heavy, bigger, heavier strings and a more aggressive attack and a heavier right hand and a meaty tone that sometimes even had a little bit of dirt on it. Which and no one died from it. So
Well, just to interrupt you there, I always equated my playing to a construction worker, and if the solo was really hard, I'd wear a hard hat for the session. Not true.
Not true, but it makes a good story. So,
Yeah.
Ray, thank you so much for being willing to do this, and
Sure.
just excited, because frankly, you made this huge impact, and then there kind of came this, what happened to Ray Flacke kind of thing, and that was one of the things that I wanted people to know that one, you're still here, and two, you're still doing wonderful creative things. And so I wanted to start off by talking about your latest endeavor, which has been writing, and that's been a real spark for you. So tell us about that.
Well, for some reason, I just decided I'd write a novel. No rhyme, no reason. And I've always been a fan of and interested in the Voynich manuscript, which has been carbon dated to the 1400s, and nobody's ever been able to decipher it. So I just sat down and wrote a story about it being stolen. And while it's not really finished, and I didn't know what I was doing, and one friend of mine who went to journalism school said, "Boy, there's a lot of bloody exclamation marks in there." Because I didn't know, and I'm just writing. But what I came out of there with was what great fun it is creating characters and how they look and rooms and stuff like that. So I kind of finished that, if you will, and then I thought, well, time to write the autobiography, which I'd been threatening to do. And I started writing that, and that was what it is. It's actually finished. I got to the epilogue, and but I still need to go back and tighten it up and edit it before. And I don't have any publishing outlets for it. So we'll see.
Yeah.
And then from there, I said to myself, well, you had that title banging around in your head for as long as we can remember, we being me and I. Mm-hmm. And it was The Boy Who Would Be Birds. And I don't know where the title came from. It was just banging around in my head at least 30 years. So I just said, well, let's sit down and write the damn thing. So I did. I'd spend 3 or 4 hours out on the deck with the classical radio, the music going, and just wrote this whimsical hijinks tale. And I've almost finished the second one. I've just got the last couple of paragraphs to finish. But it's just great fun. And as I said yesterday, if you want to make money, you probably shouldn't write a book. Or for that matter, pick up a guitar. So,
Words of wisdom from Uncle Ray.
But it's true. I didn't pick up a guitar, even thinking about money. I was way too young to think about that. And while I'm not too young to think about money now, I certainly didn't start writing it to make money. I didn't even think about it. It was just like, oh man, this is great fun, and I'd be giggling and chuckling my own phrases. It was just a lot of fun.
Yeah,
so show us what I've been up to.
Show us the cover of the of the children's book.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And the artwork, as you can see on there, was done by my friend Michael Snows. I don't know if you know Michael Snows.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, his son, Michael, and I first started working together when Sterling was about 4 years old. And one day I'm over at the house, I don't know, when he was about 11 or 12 or something, doing some overdubs for him. And I happened to walk by and I looked down at what Sterling was sketching, and it was like Superman and Spider-Man, and they were just amazing. So when I knew this thing needed some visuals, he was the first person I called. And, you know, that's the meeting. That's Norman's first dive into the sea. and there's a couple of other pictures in there too. And the pictures relate to the preceding paragraph.
I know you're still working on it, but what's the working title of your autobiography?
It is, I'll spell it, apostrophe KIN apostrophe ELL, two separate words. Kinell.
Yes.
Now, apparently you sussed this, have you?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because
Yes.
several people have. It's a polite way of saying FUCK.
Yes.
So you could say in the house, you know, if you're around your mum or your dad, you go, Kinell, really? Or other situations, you know, instead of swearing, you can go Kinell.
Yeah.
So I that was always the title of the book. It was the first thing that sprang to my mind. Kinell fired again, you know, and the inflection, which you can't read into it, but Kinell fired again. You know, so, and that's right, because I've been fired lots of times and proud of it.
Okay, well let's back up to just so one, there's different places that are listed as where you were born. Was it Bognor Regis or
I was actually born in called Milford-on-Sea,
okay,
in Hampshire, which is, I suppose, about an hour up the coast west.
Okay.
But I grew up in Bognor Regis, and I could see the English Channel from my bedroom window, which was a great way to grow up.
Yeah.
And I was in the sea 12 hours a day, you know, really, really good for the system, you know, great way to grow up.
Yeah.
And it was a holiday, seaside town.
Right.
Lots of fun.
Yes. So were these English, Englishmen on holiday, or were these internationals?
Oh, it was mainly English people. I don't. Well, if foreigners came over, no, that wasn't. Just sort of day holiday makers, and they had a big holiday camp thing down there.
Okay.
Huge, and people would come down there in the chalets. It looked like a prison camp. They had a big fence around it and barbed wire.
So was that in one of the ways in which you were exposed to music early on, seeing performers, there, or what got you into music in the first place?
Well, and as I say in the book, the first time I heard Apache by the Shadows.
Yeah.
And I was on the beach, excuse me. I was on the beach or in that area, and I heard this come out from the jukebox in this little cafe called the Perdido. Memory. Mm-hmm. And I heard that, and that was it. The game was up. You know, it just, the richness of the melody, of course, Hank's tone, although he played a Strat, but yeah, there you
go. Well, he didn't know any better.
Yeah, no, he had a wonderful sound, wonderful tone and sound and phrasing, and that was great. But that was it for me. And then I think my parents bought me the usual $5 guitar or £5 guitar with action that high.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the difference, so I learned to play this thing, as I'm sure many of us did, on, not very good equipment, you know. Anyway, it was good. It was good. I didn't know any better, so I just kept playing, and you know, then I found out. And then when I got my Gibson 335, because Blackmore had one, and my local hero, who we'll talk about in a little bit maybe, but everybody was dropping their action sound so low. And Blackmore was, and apparently, I never did this, but apparently people were putting a banjo string on the top E, and then bouncing all the way down. The bottom string would be what was your fifth string.
Right.
And
Very
with the action really low,
yeah,
you know, you had to play fast because there was no air underneath the strings with which to milk a note.
Exactly.
You know, and I all this stuff is going rattling around. I don't know anything about physics, you know, but after a while, you know, when I started jacking the action up, and this was much later on, I have to say, I would do a quarter twist on the bridge, maybe every month, so I didn't notice the pain and anguish.
It was gradual.
Yeah, it's the best way to do it, you know. This isn't my guitar. This is a guitar that Tommy Emmanuel lent me, bless his heart, because I had sold mine and I had a gig to do out in Colorado or something. It was probably the last gig I ever did, actually. And he lent me that guitar and a little amplifier. And I keep sending him notes saying, "Hey, I've still got your guitar." He never replies. I guess he wanted me to have it. I don't know, but maybe I shouldn't assume that. But anyway, that's Tommy's guitar. So you know, I've got some of Tommy's chops.
And some of his charm maybe too.
Ah, what a character. Yes. Funny man. So now, what do you want me to do when I have to blow my nose here? Or
just do it and we'll take care of it. Yeah, don't worry.
Sure? Okay. All right. Yeah.
So you're listening to you know, you're listening to the Shadows, and then you start going along, and let's talk about Ritchie Blackmore, because you know, you said Ritchie Blackmore was a local guy, and he was playing a 335, I guess, into a Vox or.
Oh, okay. No, let's back up a little bit, because my hometown hero was a guy called Steve Gordon, who is now still a dear friend, and Steve was the first person I saw, and I remember going to see Steve play somewhere, and I was going, "Whoa, you're great," and all this bit, you know. And Steve said, "Well, if you think I'm good, you should see Ritchie Blackmore." And in the same conversation, while I was playing Steve's guitar, badly, I'm sure, he said to me, "Why aren't you using your little finger?" And it was like, I don't know. But I went home that day, that night, evening, whatever, and just started working on the little finger, you know. So, Steve, you're not using your little finger?
Yeah.
Well, I've only been playing a year. What do I know?
But it's a good observation.
So Steve, the Outlaws came to town, which Blackmore was playing in the Outlaws, and they were back in Gene Vincent, which was cool. And that's the first time I saw him play, and it was just blazingly fast, you know. Of course, everybody wanted to play fast, you know. With the low action that everybody had, you didn't have much choice. And I remember going up to Blackmore after their gig, and said, "Hey, how long have you been playing, mate?" And not being very wise to sarcasm at the time, he went, 3 minutes. It's like, well, really? So anyway, he said, help me off with my amp. And he had an old AC30 that was so beaten it would move on the dovetail joints like this, which is why he needed help taking it off the you know, anyway.
Yeah.
But no, I became a huge fan. Of course, then when the purple stuff came along, you know, because you know, like you just thought, mate, you know, where did Ray Flacke go? Well, where did Blackmore go? You know, and then one day I'm walking past a record store, And there was a picture of shades of Deep Purple in the window. I went, ah. So I got all those. And later on, funnily enough, when I got to work with, tell me if I'm getting ahead of the game, but later on when I worked with Big Jim Sullivan,
right,
his partner in the project for Tiger, the band Tiger, Derek Lawrence, produced the first 2 or 3 Purple albums. So, you know, and Big Jim taught Blackmore to play. Jim would come home and Blackmore would be sitting on his doorstep wanting some chops. So you know, it's like this full circle almost, you know.
Yeah. So just, you know, because, you know, players in the U.S. might not be as familiar with Big Jim Sullivan. So would you just kind of explain the significance of him, you know, because a lot of guys here are just not aware of him at all. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, though, when Big Jim was the studio player in England in the 60s, played on everything, great solos and wonderful melodic licks, you know. And see, don't let me go out on a tangent. Now I've drifted.
It's okay.
So, Big Jim. Okay. So Steve, my mentor, was playing with, this is getting a little convoluted here, I'm sorry. But Steve was playing with a band called the Diamonds in my hometown. And they also were the backing band for a major star in England, an American guy called PJ Proby, who, yes, I'm sure you've heard the name, but he was huge in it. Well, Big Jim played on the records. And there's a couple of solos. There's one song called Together, and the other one's called Hold Me. And those solos for the 60s are just insane. Go and check them out. So Steve, after I got to know Steve a little bit in a couple of years, and I'm 15 years old now, Steve came around and he said, hey, I'm going to take 2 weeks holiday. He said, why don't you fill in for me, Proby? I've only been playing 2 years, good grief. You know, and of course I didn't. I just said, oh, absolutely, no problem.
Yeah.
So Steve would come around and he taught me the whole show from start to finish, and including the Hold Me and Together solos, you know, which were great. Anyway, I went up to London and stayed at Proby's house, you know, hundreds of people, birds flying in and out left and right. It was quite crazy. And I was just sitting there quietly on the couch, minding my own business most of the time. But he never did work. So I never did do a gig, which is probably just as well for everybody. He asked me to join the band, which, as I said, you know, great honor. And I got to do my little country things, which Jim loved. You know, and Jim was doing what I called, I mean, he was really the guitar player who played with Pink Floyd, David Gilmour. So he was kind of doing, to my mind, his David Gilmour, Ritchie Blackmore thing. It was really intense. I'd see the veins popping out of his neck, you know. But he was a great player and played some amazing stuff. And I would just do my little bending country things, you know. But he was always about getting to, you know, to Nashville. Jim was always saying, you need to go to America and kick James Burton's ass. I went, oh, really? Yeah, man, go on, get over there, you know. I mean, he was right that I needed to go to the States and to Nashville. And, you know, I already knew that deep down when I first heard Chet when I was 12. You know, and then hearing area code 615 in the early 70s.
Right.
And that was, that's where I got to go. And then Roy Nichols a little later on, you know, I got to be in that country somewhere, you know. And, but yeah, Jim was, and as it happens, I would have planned to come to the States after Tiger. And it wouldn't have been the right time, because when I did get here, everything just fell into place. I was suddenly working and playing music that I wanted to play that I couldn't find in England. And my playing went up. I mean, it was just a new lease of life. You know, working with Steve Earle in a Tex-Mex band in '79. Great fun. Oh yeah, what the fuck is this? What the hell is this? You know, this is great music. Tex-Mex, what's that? You know?
Yeah.
And then Joe Sun, you know, things like that. But anyway, when Jim's thing finished, a band called Meal Ticket reared its very attractive head, and it came together, as did the Hartford Band. I went down to sit in with these guys. They were called Bill Escher and the Beacons at the time. And I don't know if you know the phrase. You know what a Belisha beacon is?
No.
It's the thing. It stands at the either end of a walkway with a flashing yellow light.
Okay.
I don't know if they use them. That's called anyway. Steve Simpson, he was always coming up with weird phrases. He called the band Bill Escher and the Beacons. Anyway, so I went to sit in with them at a lunchtime pub gig. There was just 4 of them. And I sat in, that made 5. And my old pal, Chris Hunt, who I first started working with when I was 15, he'd just come up to visit and hang out. You know, Chris is a great drummer. And so we finished the lunchtime gig, and Chris says, so I don't know how it came about, but Chris drove back down to the South Coast, about an hour and a half away, to pick up his drums, came back up, and we did the evening gig. And the band, you know, we all looked at each other and went, we better pay attention, you know, something serious going on. And there were 2 writers, an external writer and the keyboard player. And they had great songs, phenomenal songs, you know, it's like, you know, the old phrase PAT. I was talking to somebody about that. Yeah, do you know what that means? PAT?
No.
Well, if you're in the studio working on dodgy songs, the PAT, polishing turds, you know, it's,
yes.
You know, a little crude. And the first time I heard it, it was a drummer called Owen Hale in the booth, in the drum booth when I went down to Muscle Shoals for the first time. We were doing a custom project, you know, and I never met these guys, but each time after the track, Owen would just go, PAT. And after 2 or 3 times, you know, PAT, what the hell's that? And he went, Ray, we're polishing turds. And it was funny. I fell about it, you know, it was very, very fun. Never heard it before. Anyway, boy, can I drift or what?
So you were so after Meal Ticket, that's when, you know, you knew, I guess you knew Don Williams, drummer.
Right. I had rode Mac in to play drums on lots of the country gigs we did. And I left Meal Ticket in February of '78, and Mac came to the States in February. And the story of I know it's not about me, but, you know, Mac was going to go back and teach history in school. He's give up the music game. But he was a huge Don Williams fan and a Kenny Malone fan. So this gig opened up for him where he could play in the opening act, just so he could enjoy watching Don, you know.
Yeah. Well,
Don only had 2 members in his band, Danny Flowers and Dave somebody.
Pomeroy.
No. Wait, no.
Okay.
This
before
is
that.
way earlier. Way before.
Okay.
Dave, I can't think of his last name. But they went back to Don and said, we found the drummer we need. So off Mac went. He never went back to it, which I think is a wonderful story. I love tales like that, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, and ironically, when I left Meal Ticket, you know, basically it was badly managed, you know, and well, you know, so I left. And Phil Kaufman, the Mangler, Emmylou's road manager and such. Well, I first met him in a pub called the Nashville Rooms when I was with Meal Ticket, and he liked the band. He came down, and I remember I'd only just met him a couple of times, And we were in the public bar having a couple of beers, you know, and I noticed he was wearing a Flying Burrito Brothers t-shirt, you know, and Graham Parsons, you know, and I went, oh, right. Cool shirt. He said, you want it? And, you know, I still can't remember to this day, because we swapped t-shirts then. And I've never been as big as Phil. I don't know if he got the t-shirt on or whether I was wearing a really big shirt, but he told me this was the t-shirt that Graham Parsons died in.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's like, really? I still get shivers talking about it, you know? So I've got this t-shirt and I'm wearing it with great pride and it's got holes in it and it's, you know. So I gave it to my girlfriend at the time. She said, oh, I can stitch that up, darn that up. And I went, I don't know. Well, I let her have the damn t-shirt, and out of the bottom of one of her straw bags that had a hole in it, it must have fallen out and it was never seen again. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I could pluck up the courage to tell Phil the story of it, you know. And he said, if you know Phil at all, you know, there's some caustic line coming out all the time, you know. He must have said something, I don't know, but he was very gentlemanly about it, because I felt dreadful losing it, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So
okay.
So under his influence, not Phil's, but under Max, you know, you've moved to Nashville, and you know, I'm guessing you don't, you know, do you have a place? Are you staying with him, or you know, what happens?
Oh no, when I arrived, Mac picked me up at the airport, and I remember thinking, driving in, look at all these adverts right close to the street, you know. The way ads come right out to the, you know, right. That was a new one for me. I went, whoa, what is that? So Matt picked me up. We went back. I arrived with a couple of gallon jugs of vodka, duty free. That was my poison at the time. Screwdrivers. So anyway, we go back to Mac's house, and Mac's already playing. Now this is in August. When I left, and Mac's already been here about 6 months. He's already on the road with Don. And the bass player, Dave, the bass player, lived next door to Mac. And Dave let me stay in his house while they were out on the road for 6 weeks or something. So it got me acclimated. I'd be out every night, you know. Do you know a little bar called Springwater in town?
Yes.
It's right next to the Centennial Park. And it was a real funky old. And I used to spend a lot of time in there, way too much. I still walk by it, you know, and go, no, not again, no, no, that hangover still hurts, you know. So, you know, I'm out there sort of sitting in, and you know, whatever I can do to get out there and play. And you know, that I was sort of one thing, you know, I'm getting ahead of myself again.
It's okay.
But it was, and everybody I sat in with, I remember a couple of guys called the Forney brothers, and I sat in with them a lot, and they were fun to play, and it was all fun. It was all new, different stuff for me, and different players and styles and attitude. You know, it was great. I couldn't get enough of it. You know.
So you were also teaching lessons, and you started teaching Joe's son's guitar player.
Yeah, you know, I'd forgotten about that until you mentioned it yesterday. Yeah, what was his name? I can't remember his name. But yeah, I was. And as you reminded me, he left, and Joe asked me if I want to join, and I did. And I have to say this about Joe and Skags, for that matter, is that they both fought the record companies to use the band, the road band.
Right.
And to be honest with you, had they not had me playing on the record, I would probably not have done either gig, you know, because what am I going to do? Go on the road and play somebody else's stuff? I didn't come here to do that.
Yeah.
You know. So
So you were with Joe, you know, playing gigs, and then evidently you played a show on the same bill with Emmylou.
I tell you what I meant to say. Let me back up to the February when I left Meal Ticket.
Sure.
And the reason I brought Mangler into it. Albert was leaving Emmylou at this month. And I was angling for an audition, you know, Mangler, I don't know. Anyway, their last gig before they went to France, the Hot Band with Albert, was in Brighton, which is just down the road from me. So I went over there with a pal of mine, and they arrived late. They had no time for sound check, and they were leaving directly after the gig to go to France. So imagine this: I'm sitting playing my guitar, plugged in. All these people are just moving around me. Nobody gives a rat's ass about, you know. I mean, Albert's no help. You know, you would think, Albert, help! Nobody's paying. I'm auditioning, and nobody's. So whatever it was. But Skaggs was the only person who came over and said, "Oh, that's nice stuff. You know, oh, thanks." But I didn't get the gig. Frank Reckard got the gig, and I'm glad he did, because I found out later on that Emmy likes to do a lot of C sharps and B flats and stuff. Now, I can play in those keys, but where are my open strings? You know, and I wasn't about to go start taking guitars out on the road, you know, one for this and one for that. It's a moot point because, you know, I didn't get the gig.
Yeah.
So really, then when I was working with Joe, we played these big European country festivals. Cast 1,000 and total chaos, you know. But I was playing with Joe, and Skaggs asked me if I wanted to do the Opry with him, when the first time he was going to do the Opry. And Emery Gordy, who was Emmy's bass player, had never done the Opry, and he wanted to do it. So I said, sure, hell yeah, you know. And then he said, you know, I'm thinking about putting my own thing together. You know, are you interested? And I already knew, you know, I know where this is going. This is going to be really successful. I don't know how, but I just had a good feeling that as he had been around so many great players and songs and things, his standard would already, you know, his benchmark would already be pretty up there, and it was, you know. So I did that, and then we started rehearsing. And as I say, he thought, you know, the studio, the record company going, "Oh, just hire the studio players." You know, I mean, no, I don't want to do that. You know, and you know, good for all of us that he didn't. You know, I mean, I guess he had seen me play with Joe, and I guess he went, "Well, that'll work. That noisy banging old bastard, that'll work." You know, along with the bluegrass and the fiddle and whatever else was going on. So that's what we did. It was great fun. You know.
So let's. So the first album you did with Ricky was "Waiting for the Sun to Shine," and
I believe it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And so was there pre-production? Like, did you work? Did y'all go to a rehearsal hall and work up the tunes beforehand, or did you just go into the studio? How did the album come together? I
remember Bruce and I and Skaggs in Bruce's house going over one of the tunes. I can't think what it was, but no, there was no real pre-production. I think we might have rehearsed some of these songs, just getting familiar with them. But no, it was just go to studio and bang it out.
Yeah. Know? So this was so everyone played at the same time, or were you overdubbing?
Well, I certainly overdubbed solos and everything, but yeah, everybody was on the floor. Yeah. And we had some great people too, that unless you look at the credits on them, we had, I don't know about this album, but the other albums with Skaggs, he had Lloyd Green playing on it.
Yeah.
I think Weldon played on a couple of things. Dennis Burnside played piano. Jerry Croon played drums, I remember. Mm-hmm. And I think it was the second CD, second album, where Joe Osborne was in on the session. You know,
the Wrecking Crew.
Right. Yeah. You know, I got to know Joe quite well. I did a bunch of sessions for him, you know. And I say this humbly and modestly, I do. It's funny to hear it. Joe would always say to me, he said, see, that's what that Burton's trying to do. And you know, he was just being a smart ass, you know, but it was so funny.
Right.
You
know, this is kind of a gear sidetrack, but I'm guessing by this point you already had kind of your sound together, and you had kind of gotten into the Lab Series amp and that
did.
Rosewood board Tele and stuff. So tell us a little bit about getting your sound together.
Okay, let me back up then, because I worked with before Joe's son. I worked with a guy over here called I can't think of his name. Curses. Well, anyway, I was doing this little gig with him, and it was great fun. We were doing all sorts of old songs I could relate to and play. And we went out on the road and backed Steve Young for a while. You know,
yes,
he's no longer with us, but we went out on the road and backed Steve for a while. And Lee McCormick was his name. And Lee, I didn't have an amp, and Lee had my first Lab Series with a 15 L9, which he gave to me. You know, and ironically, all the amps that have meant something to me have all been gifts. It's the weirdest thing. I mean, that's the BR1 was a gift.
Yeah.
You know, and those were really you know, interestingly enough, the reason the Lab meant so much to me, and it took me 3 months to get used to it, because prior to that, I had resigned myself to just playing in it, you know, pretty much in the middle of the neck. I couldn't get the low F starter, pull-offs and all that in the key of F4. If I got the bottom end right, the top end would be too high and tinny, and vice versa. You know, so I had to compromise. I didn't know what else to do about it. So here's this Lab Series, and I hit the low E, and or let's say an F, and the F on the E string. I went, this is the same. This is a consistent sound. So suddenly the whole neck opened up to me. You know, these sort of I didn't turn the amp on, but yeah, can you hear that at all?
Yeah.
Where's that pick? I'll put the amp on in a minute, but just these sort of in F. But I couldn't have done those things. It was all like woolly, and you couldn't. So anyway, you know, Lee gave me the Lab, and I've thanked him profusely in the book, you know, because he given me that amp. He set me on a whole new journey, you know. Oh man, this is great. Doesn't matter where I play on the neck, it's me and it's the same sound. It was such a treat, really. So so we did that. Oh yeah, I just wanted to thank Lee for the Lab, you know, when you started me off.
Yeah. And then anyway. and then the Tele.
The Tele, I bought that in '79, I think, and it was advertised. I don't think the magazine around it was called the Traders Post.
Yes,
I think it was called that.
Yeah, it was around
for those
for a long
in England.
time.
It was like the Exchange of. Yeah, for those in England, it's kind of like the Exchange of Mark, you know. So anyway, I see this thing in there, and I didn't have a car. I remember my good friend T-Bone, who was a rhythm guitar player in Lee's band. He drove me out there, and this guy had the Tele sitting there. He didn't have an amp, so I played it, and I went, "How much do you want for this?" He said $250. So I knocked him down to $225, and left with this guitar that just sang acoustically before he ever plugged it in. Yeah, I did the sustain, was great. Oh yeah, I'm having this, and it truly was a great guitar, you know, and a damn good price.
Yes.
I thought.
And so I know we're kind of getting into gear here, but you started modifying the guitar. It
Oh
looks
yeah,
like you changed the machine heads and you changed the
well,
bridge. And so what happened?
absolutely. And I just remembered, I've been, it's been about 6 months now, I'm talking to a bass player called Charlie Anderson. Do you know Charlie? Played with Reba and
Yeah.
various people. You know, I've known him for years. Well, he worked at Richard Cotton's music store in Hillsborough Village at the time.
Yes.
And he put the Schecter, I think it's Schecter bridge and the shallow heads. And I had a brass nut put in. And the black scratch plate came from a friend of mine called Michael Spriggs, who gave me that. What else did I do to it? That was about it. You know,
But
I needed the 6-piece. I needed the 6-piece bridge because that 3 thing, you know, you get one in tune, then the other's out, and
right.
unless that's how it comes perfectly in tune. But anyway, it's wiser to be able to control each one, of course.
Right. And the tune, but the regular tuners that were on the guitar weren't working right, and you replaced them, or you weren't. What was wrong with the tuners?
If there was anything wrong with them, I don't know. I don't remember that, but okay. I changed them out. Because those tuning heads, I think the workings were actually plastic, were they not?
Yeah, those tuners with the F on the back of them, they weren't the best tuners that Fender made. So,
right, but they weren't the workings inside plastic.
They weren't plastic.
Underneath the metal.
Yeah, it wasn't as robust as like the Klusons that had been on earlier guitars, or like Shallers or something like that. So they weren't the best tuners.
Well, but somebody told me that the actual mechanics of it was plastic inside the chrome, whatever it was. I never looked, but anyway, I don't know why I changed them, but I did, and I'm just thinking now. When I had the Shallows on, it felt a lot more comfortable.
Right,
I remember that.
Yeah, more accurate.
It might have been. Yeah, it felt better. And it might have been Charlie's idea to put those on. I don't remember, but
so you got that
was that.
So you got that kind of sound together, and then sometimes you do some type of echo device, whether it was a Echoplex or a Memory Man or something.
Well, Skags, because Albert had an Echoplex, and he was doing all his ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding stuff, which is great. Skags bought everybody an Echoplex, and I mean, I plugged into it and just had this, as I did on the records, I borrowed a pedal from Paul Worley, who was a studio player back then, and then he went on to produce lots of stuff.
Right.
But he lent me a little, I don't know what it was. So it's just this tiniest little amount of slapback. You really couldn't hear it. And that's what I used the Echoplex for. And after a while, I got used to it. You get sucked into these things, as I did with the chorus back in England with the Roland JC 120.
Yeah.
Oh, listen to that sound. Oh, yeah, I'll just play that all day long.
So you kind of got your sound together, and that be kind of, and also it was a little grittier, at times. So, because on the Lab, it had a master volume, and you could kind of turn it up, and you could get it where it had a little bit of dirt on the note too.
Well, I didn't do that. I had everything at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
That was it. Where I never, the minutia of guitars and amplifiers, I'm not interested in at all.
Okay.
Once I think I've been very fortunate. Once I found a guitar that I loved, and I found an amp that let me play the way I always felt or heard me play it. And then it was, I don't need anything else. I don't need to constantly be trying to change my tone or seeking a different guitar, or what can I do with this or that.
Right.
I'm very fortunate that I didn't have that rotten little bastard sitting on my shoulder going, "You sure you don't want to change the frets out?" or some.
You sure you don't need a 335?
Get out of here. No, not anymore. I've got a Tele. No, get out of here.
So what was it about how did you become kind of a Tele guy? How did you kind of find that that's your guitar?
Well, the first Tele I bought, now we've got to go back to 71. When I first came back from Germany, I lived in Germany for about 5 years, and came back from Germany, and I had a Strat at the time. Shh, don't say a word.
No.
Edit this out. No.
Yeah.
No, I had a Strat, and I'd swapped it for a Gibson SG, which I loved, the tone of it and everything, but I didn't like the neck, those Gibson frets. And I didn't realize at the time it was probably impossible, but I wanted to put a Tele neck on this SG body, but that didn't happen. So I traded it for this Strat. And when I got this gig it's a town on the East Coast called Great Yarmouth. I think it was a sit-down gig, 2 or 3 sets a night. But when I saw the ad in the paper, it said country rock guitar player in the Melody Maker, which was, the Bible, if you will, to find gigs and stuff like that. So I go up there and I get the gig, and it's not a country rock gig. It's rock and roll and country music. So we were doing a lot of old rock and roll stuff, the Elvis and whatever it was. And we were also doing strict country, lots of Haggard. So that's where I first got to hear Roy Nichols.
Right. Yeah.
The old, because, the tone he had and those little Django nuances every now and again. Oh, wait, play that again. And I bought a Tele in that town. I don't know what happened to the Strat. Probably threw it in the sea, I hope. But so I got the Tele, and that's where I learned lots of these country songs that I'd never heard before. So that was a great joy to do that gig. And while we were there, the occasional floor show would come in, and we would back up these people. Well, now old friends of mine, but then little Jenny was a country singer, and her husband Paul, they came up there to do a little gig. Jenny did lots of gigs around the country. She was quite famous, and so we backed him up, and they said to me, look, when you get back to London, give us a shout. And I did, and it was through Paul that I found my first country gig, doing the pubs and everything. So, once again, I thanked him in the book, but thanks again.
Yeah.
Because it's all about connections, and who and the right time and all that stuff. And I'd never been that kind of obsequious, I must go where so-and-so is with the chant, that kind of, find it incongruous, to be honest, sort of, if you run into somebody and they go, oh man, let me call you for a session or something, that was great. But I was never that sort of person that would go somewhere where I knew somebody was to suck up, or what do they call it over here? Schmoozing
or Germing. Yeah.
Germing. Yeah. Well, I was never that way, but okay, get me back.
So that kind of gets us, into the Telecaster thing. You're playing with Skags. So Ricky, of course, had just gotten off playing in the Hot Band, with Albert. Was there any kind of pressure of him trying to make you be like Albert, or were you allowed to do completely your own thing?
No, and if he had started that nonsense, I'd have been gone.
Yeah.
Now I'm 30 years old, and I don't want you telling me what to play.
Right.
I mean that hard-nosed, but that said, you're there to apply what you do to songs, but no, he never ever, funnily enough, he did say something once at rehearsals, and I can't remember what I do remember what I said, because he said something about Albert, and I don't remember specifically what it was, I'm doing this my way, or something like that. And that's interesting you asked that, because that's the only time I can remember. I don't even know what he was after. He was just suggesting, I think, a style of, but not copying Albert.
Right.
I don't think he ever wanted that, and he would never have got it. I can't play like Albert.
Yeah.
And I don't want to.
Because also there was, there was the "Don't Cheat in Our Hometown" that was kind of a mix of old tracks that had Albert and the Hot Band on it, and then there was like Uncle Pen and other stuff that you had played on. And so what was that like when you did have to play some of those tunes, like "Honey, Won't You Open That Door" and things like that, where Albert had played on it, and were you allowed to kind of do your own thing, or?
Oh yeah. No, now what I did did Albert's intro, or whatever it was.
Right.
And one time it was at a huge arena. I don't know where it was, but we start that song, and of course I got the pickups. So here I go with great confidence. But I'm up a semitone. I'm in the wrong damn key. So the whole band comes in, band is like,
yes.
And of course, everybody in the band, all heads went, and afterwards I said, look, next time anything like that happens, don't spin your head around and looking at me or anybody else like that. That just gives the game away. It sounded bad enough as it was without you going, in tantamount, all pointing to me. I mean, it was my fault, but boy, I just played with such confidence and went, oh, good. What am I doing?
So were you given any kind of input when you were doing your solos, or was it just like, impress me, or just kind of do what you do?
Yeah, he never told me to do anything. And as I say, I can't remember what the Albert thing was. It was maybe he's trying to paint a picture. I don't know what it was, but
yeah.
But no, we went in the studio and we played the things, and my fills, nobody ever said anything about my fills. Nothing was ever changed. I do remember one thing that was kind of funny. In One Way Rider, I think it was One Way Rider, in the solo, there's a little spot in there that goes down.
Yeah.
Well, I was still sitting outside, and Skags was comping solos. So he said, "Oh, come in and have a listen." So I went and had a listen, and I heard that dick dang. I went, I would never have played that. I would never have phrased like that. And he said, "You did just play that." I said, no, you just edited that to make it sound like that. I would never have phrased anything like that. And this went on and on and on. It was all humorous, but I still, I haven't heard that track in forever, but whenever I hear it, I go, it was just so, it was twee, as we say at home.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So from seeing, the foot, of course on YouTube, there's, footage of, you playing with Skags, like on Austin City Limits and different, award shows and different things like that. And it looks like from the outside, it looks like that y'all had a good musical relationship where he seemed, where it seemed like y'all really played off each other. And it seemed like the whole band kind of, had fun to a degree.
Well, Skags and I got on famously, I mean, he had a good sense of humor and he was pretty silly, and he got a little bit. I think I told you yesterday about underneath the scratch plate on my guitar, it said 666. Well, I'm not a religious man, period. So, I just thought, oh, that's interesting that I would end up with this. So I teased Skags as I think I showed him 666 under the scratch plate,
Yeah.
And we actually think it was 999, but I milked it for all it was worth.
Right.
But apparently Skaggs told Bowden, I don't know if he was serious, and I said, I think that Flacke's into devil worship. Excuse me.
Yes.
But no, Skaggs never, ever told me anything to play.
Yeah. And
there were some parts. I remember one of the songs we did. This was part of the demo.
yeah, you may
But
see
that
me
intro,
walking.
yeah, that intro was on the demo, as I remember. Some
Okay.
guy in Texas wrote it, and a great lick.
Yeah.
Get the old low strings going, high action.
Yeah. And again, just was there any type of input as far as your tone or anything, or was it just like, this is my sound, and he's capturing it, as the producer?
This is my sound. Deal with it.
Yeah. So,
Excuse me.
so
There was no. I mean, well, let's be fair. Skaggs had heard me play with Joe's son,
yeah,
so he'd heard me play through an L9, and he knew I wasn't a quiet and timid player.
yeah,
By any stretch, and I guess that's what he wanted. No, he not once did he ever tell me, don't do that, or don't do this, or do this, or do that.
yeah.
I remember once, though, he did say something to me, because I love thirds, all these, those pull-offs you were doing yesterday. Incidentally, that pull-off,
Mhm.
I always started it on the D.
Yeah.
It gives it a different feel, instead of going, because it's half backwards then. No, I can't do it like that.
See, that's what happens when you learn it the wrong way, like I did.
Well, it's excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, great allergies. I had a good little point I was going to make.
Well, you were talking about Skaggs not liking thirds or something.
Oh no, he said to me something. Well, he didn't. He was. I think he was intimating. Do you ever think about using any other harmonies? I mean, I can't remember the conversation.
Yeah.
But, I remember my retort was something like, "I like them," or something. I don't know, but it was. These were just suggestions,
Right,
or ideas. There was nothing rigid about this at all, and I couldn't have dealt with that. It's. I heard all these dreadful stories about, especially in the bluegrass world. When you came home after the gig working with Bill Monroe or some of these people, you were expected to go out to the farm and mow the lawn.
Yes, I've heard those stories from many different sources, so I believe they're true. Yeah.
Yeah, really. I'm a guitar player. Hire a lawnmower guy. That amazed me. These stories. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
You would never see anything like that in England. Somebody trying to manipulate you like that. Or take advantage.
Right.
Anyway.
So
I'm sorry about that.
No, you're fine. So after about 3 years, you and Ricky parted ways. There's always been different conjecture about that. So I was just wondering what's the real story?
Well, the real story is that I'd been there 3 years. I just got married. I was getting tired of the road. I had tried every musical permutation on the solos and fills. I'd worn out the material for myself, if you will. And all the other players in the band would always come to me and bitch and moan about money. Why they came to me, I don't know, but they did. And after a while, I got sort of pissed off with it. We sat down in the back of the bus. And I don't know whether this was just me being mischievous or truly serious, but I said, look, if you're really pissed off about not getting money, I'm not a union man, but go on strike. Just before the gig, we're not, I don't know, telling them all this. And of course, as I said yesterday, out came the pitchforks and the flames, off to the portcullis.
Yes.
So, anyway, I don't know how that got back to Skags, or I really don't remember the details. But anyway, he took every member of the band on the bus and they all wilted and broke down, you know. So, but I was your evil instigator, of course, you know. Well, that's okay. I had 3 years, you know. So Skaggs invites me up to his room. Well, invite might not be the right word. And he said, Ray, I'm going to fire you. I said, you can't do that. I quit, you know. And I always wanted to say that, you know, the old, I'm sure it's been said many times, but I'd never said it. But, and then I made the gentlemanly offer of, you know, you want me to stay on and till you find a replacement? No, that's okay, he said. And I went, oh, okay. So the very last night, I think it was Vancouver. And the very last night, my wife, my then wife, had sent this huge, I mean, I don't know how much it must have cost, a huge bouquet of flowers that were, you know, just wide as hell and taller than me and everything. It must have cost her a fortune. Anyway, with the road crew and everybody, we set the flowers up in between the chair or whatever the amp was sitting on, you know. They were able to. So here's the amp, and then the flowers are in there, and the guys put lights underneath them. So there's just this gorgeous peacock tail of flowers right in front of me. And it was, Skaggs never even acknowledged it. You know, he never said anything about it. You know, I think I saw a wry grin once when he looked at it. You know, one of those. But it was time not to be there, and I didn't give a rat's ass. You know, so good. I can go home and sleep in my own bed with my wife. You know, so it didn't bother me at all. It didn't bother me one little bit.
And then, interestingly enough,
anyway,
you know, he used, you know, he started using the Lab Series L9, and you know, of course, he kind of, you know, got into the B-bender thing, and kind of did his, you know, he had to learn your licks or his version of your licks and things like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, whether he learnt my licks or not, you know, he could have played guitar. He's a good enough guitar player. Yeah. I mean, you know, it would be completely different, but he could have filled that saved himself some money, I suppose. Yeah. But I don't know. It was time to not be there. Yeah. And I wasn't, and got back to town and started, you know, tapping into sessions and you know, I was already getting lots of calls because of Highway 40 Blues and Heartbroken, things like that. And, you know, I always liked the guitar, you know, I'm a big believer in, if somebody's taking a solo, don't make me struggle to crank it up in the mix, whatever it is, you know. Yeah. And I always, you know, I know I'm a Deep Purple freak, but I still use Deep Purple's album In Rock as one of the best sonic recordings I've ever heard. I mean, you don't have to struggle to listen to anything, and the separation is brilliant. And I've never forgotten that sonically. I always hear that. You know, the fact that it was Deep Purple, my favorite rock band, was by the by, to be honest, you know, about this. But yeah, I just love that clarity, you know, that they had. But yeah.
So you moved on to doing sessions, and you were kind of staying in Nashville. You played, you know, with Lacey J. Dalton and Kathy Mattea and you know, these sessions. So did you enjoy, you know, because session work has its own, you know, challenges as far as, you know, like you mentioned before, the PAT. So there's some PAT, a lot of PAT that goes on in session work, and then there's also the producers that allow you the freedom to play what you want to play, and those that are like, no, you know, I want you to play like what Reggie Young did or something like that.
Well, if you know, I have a great story about Reggie telling a story about this. I don't know, it might have been on your show. Yeah. But when Reggie first came to Nashville, apparently, whoever was producing it said to Reggie, "Hey, Reggie, you couldn't give me some of that Grady Martin, could you?" Or whoever it was. Yes. And Reggie said, "I've got his phone number here if you need it."
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
In that quiet,
Yes.
disarming way. You know, I'd have probably said it. Well, I've got his phone number here if you want it. You know, and Reggie goes, he's got his phone number. You know, just great, just shut him right up. You know,
Right.
But no, I was very fortunate. I got called for the way I played.
Perfect.
Absolutely. I mean, if I get called for 2 or 3 songs on an album that are appropriate for me, perfect. And I remember doing a demo session where Russ Paul was on steel. It was just demos, and this one song comes up, and I couldn't hear a damn thing, you know. So I to save torturing everybody, and I did this a few times, I think. Not that I had to do it many times, but I went in and spoke to the writers and said, I just don't hear anything on this, you know. So to save us going round and round and round, you know, why don't you get, you know, get Russ to do it or something. You know, Russ picked the guitar up and knocked it out, and it was great. You know, it was perfect for the song. And, you know, things like that. But very rarely did that happen. And as I say, you know, getting called for the way you play is the biggest compliment.
That's the greatest.
I was doing, and I loved working with these guys. It'll come to me. Anyway, I'm doing this session for these guys. It's much later on when I was in the Hartford Band. And what's that on the screen? Get off there. See, I distracted myself. God, I hate this.
Working for these guys and you were in the Hartford Band, and these guys called you on a session.
So they booked me to play on a lot of their on it's coming to me his name on his singles, on his album, and I remember doing one overdose on it, you know, and these jokers, because they were all great fun, we were all having lots of fun. You put his thing in, you need to get further out than that, mate. I went, oh, that's easy, you know. Yeah. And then he would hold up a 4-pack of draft Guinness, you know.
Yeah.
Incentive when the gig's done.
That's right.
But it was great to hear that. No, man, go get crazier, you know. Instead of going, no, I'm not sure about that, you know. Got anything else? You know, so I was very lucky. And being an impatient, intolerant son of a bitch, you know, I couldn't have tolerated that very much. You know, if you want Reggie, then you call Reggie. Or
right.
You know, there's his phone number. But I never had that. Never once did I have that.
Yeah. So then you got back out on the road again with Marty Stuart, and you were playing on the records too. And that was a really neat band because it was kind of stripped down. You just had bass, drums, and 2 guitar players, and those gigs were really cool to see you play. And Richard Bennett was doing a lot of producing. And
Richard played on some of the records, on some of the solos too. The cool thing about the band was it was 6 people on a bus. A bus driver, a roadie, and 4 musicians. That's about the best size ratio I can think of on a bus.
Right.
With Skags, we went from Nashville to California with all the girlfriends on board.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, it's anyway. So you, from one extreme to another.
Right.
And it was great, you know. The music was great fun. Marty and I played completely differently, but, you know, he's a great Tele player. And I love his singing. You know, he's just got a great singer, but he's got some character there. You know, an ID. He's got an ID voice. And his mandolin playing is just amazing. Wonderful. So that was good fun. And when I was doing that with Marty, the reverb in my lab series, which I barely had on, you know, I didn't, you know, less is more. Unlike Marty, bless his heart, you'd always have his reverb on about 7 or 8, you know.
Yeah.
So I used to have to stand up and put my boot on top of the amp for the reverb to kick back in. Well, one day it went out and it never did come back on. And after about 2 songs, I went, that's one more thing you don't need to worry about breaking down anymore, because now you'll never use that reverb again, ever. Yeah. And in a club, in a club, you've got room ambience, which is more than enough to make, why do you need reverb when the room ambience should take care of that? Unless it's really a part of your sound like Marty's, but I was dropping, unnecessary things, as fast as I could. Pedals, no walk of shame, please. No walk of shame.
Yes, because it as you went along, it seemed like your sound kept getting more stripped down, and not like, but and you kept having more and more control, from the guitar, instead of trying to get it through pedals or benders or anything else. Reverb.
Yeah, well, there was a time I had some TC stuff, and after a while I just sort of went, I'm tired of this. And the attraction of just a guitar, a cable, and an amp. The more I thought about it and the more I played it, I went, I'm done. And the only thing I had was that. Where is it? Right there on the neck was the what was the
it was a tuner.
What was the company?
Sabine.
Sabine, and it was called the Sabine. Oh, I can't remember what it was called, but it was the best damn tuner I'd ever seen. And Joe Glazer, dear Joe, wired it into the pickups, and so you could turn the volume down and still tune without extraneous noise coming in that you would get with the stick-on one.
Yeah.
So he put that on. So now I've got an amp, a cable, a guitar, and a tuner, and it's all in one. So I'm truly done now. It's like, okay, that's it.
Yeah. So you you played with Marty for a while, and then you kind of came back to town, and you made a solo record called Untitled Island.
I did, yeah, with Michael Snow and Jim Krause, the engineer. The three of us co-produced it. But that was fun.
Yeah, and then it had a tune that, of course, has been Chet and Mark Knopfler cover, the Tahitian Sky.
Yeah. Now that I'll tell you a story about that, and I put this in the book. I had met Chet, and I don't know if I mentioned this, and I always, I'm always afraid to mention this because, I'm not blowing a trumpet, but we were backstage at the Grammy, at the CMA Awards, the first one we did when we won Band of the Year. And Boughton comes up to me and said, my parents were there too. Boughton says, oh, somebody wants to meet you. And I was talking to my parents and a young lady, and I said, nah, he said, I think you want to meet this person. So I went, all right. So I went over there, and Chet had sought me out to tell me how much he liked my playing. I don't know if I said it, but I'm, are you sure you got the right player?
Yeah.
But, so we got to know each other, and I'd hang out at his office, and I did, what's the name of that train?
Main Street Breakdown.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I remember. Yeah, yes.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, the memory is shot, I have to say.
Yeah.
And I called Chet up and I said, man, I want to do Main Street Breakdown on the album. I said, but I don't know how you played that. What was, I didn't realize it was in B flat, and every third note was the third of B flat, which is a D. So he played it, and I went, oh, because I was down here trying to play it, properly.
Yeah.
So he showed me the thing. Oh, and it's a Django thing. It's a Django-esque thing. The idea of that. Django did it all the time. Anyway, I learned the thing and played it, but there was something else I was going to say there.
We were talking about Tahitian Sky and Chet and Mark.
Oh yeah. Well, let me tell you this. This was a sad day for me. I'd been out on the road with Jerry Douglas, a jazz guitar player. It was called Steel String Tour or something.
Yes.
Lots of. I went out and did that for a bit, And I really shouldn't have done it because I'm not a front man. I don't want to be out there playing on my own. I'm so used to playing with bands. I mean, we did have a band, but it was still, I was the focus point.
Right.
I was the one taught. It doesn't really throw me. Anyway, so we're out doing this thing, and I'm playing Tahitian Skies, and this guy comes up to me afterwards. He said, "Have you ever heard a track called Why Worry by Mark Knopfler?" And I went, "No." Already my gut is darkening, And I'm going, he said, "Well, that Tahitian Sky sounds a lot like it." Oh, my only hit,
Yes.
if you will. So I very quickly went and found that album. And what I was interested in really was when it was released, and it was released before I wrote Tahitian Skies. And I eventually listened to it. And the beginning of the damn thing is exactly that. Or very similar to that. It's the same feel. And it just, when I heard it, I went, "Oh no, really?" Well, I know I didn't steal it because I never listened to Knopfler's albums. I did like some of the singles, but I wasn't a huge fan of his playing for some reason. Great player, but just didn't appeal to me. But so anyway, there's nothing I can do about it, but I'm not feeling really good about that. And I ran into Mark in town, and over at 3rd and Lindsley, I think it was. And I wandered up, we'd already met. And I wandered up and said, "Man, I hope you didn't think I was just mortified that had happened, And I said, "Man, I hope you didn't think I nicked that, He went, "Oh, no. He was fine." But what interested me later on, and I can't ask Chet now, and I haven't seen Knopfler in forever, but when Chet and Knopfler heard that, especially Knopfler heard it, I wonder why he didn't say to Chet, "That's very reminiscent of a song I've done. Are you sure we should do this?" But apparently he didn't. So I don't know, but that was not a fun moment, the old.
Yeah. I certainly think that if Knopfler had some objections, he would have done that before they recorded it for an album.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
I would think you'd have nothing to sweat about. If at most you could say is that, maybe selfishly, Knopfler could say, "Well, I influenced him," or something like that. But
no, you didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. but no, I'm not a copyright lawyer, but you can tell that there are some similarities, but I certainly wouldn't say one was a copy by any means.
Yeah, no, it's really just the first couple of measures that have that feel and same thing. And I was mortified, as one would be.
Yeah. So after the Untitled Island album, you also started playing with Jamie Hartford, the son of John Hartford.
Well, that was much later on.
Okay.
That was, the Untitled Island thing came out, I think, I was with Marty, so it would have been 90 or 91, something around there. And we did that. And we had some amazing players on it. And I'd like to say here and now, if I may, to all the players that played on that spec'd their time. And we were never in a position to pay them,
Yeah.
But they kindly spec'd their time for me, which was, still means an awful lot. And if I can ever send them $100 each, that would make me feel a lot better. But they never got paid. But we all did a lot of spec stuff, What are you doing today? Oh, nothing. You want to? There's no money, but sign the time card, and we'll double the scale if it gets placed. And if you're not doing anything else, why don't you go and have a play and have some fun?
Yeah.
So spec thing. It was it is common, or was common in town to do that. But anyway, they did that. We finished that album, and it seemed to be well received. Then I was just still in town doing sessions and stuff. Let me get my chronology right here. Okay, so that would have been with Marty, and after the Marty thing, I just stayed in town. I think I went out and did the odd gigs with Lionel Cartwright. I did some sessions with Lionel. That was a lot of fun. He had some good songs. I did play on some of Kathy Mattea's stuff, as you mentioned, but she and I knew her very well. She was a waitress before she became a star at Friday's Restaurant. Did you ever know her down there?
I didn't know her down there, but I knew about that. Yeah,
right, because she used to have a 45 record with her hair pulled through the hole, and that's how she was serving. So I knew her from there, but I got the call for it. So anyway, I've already played on a couple of albums with her, and her guitar player, I don't remember who that wasn't. It wasn't that. Her guitar player was a guy called John Mock, and somebody in the band couldn't make it. I don't know if it was a piano player or something like that. So Kathy apparently said, "Give Flacke a call, get him in there. I like to watch him pull those funny faces when he plays." And don't we all? Steve Simpson always used to call that 3 pounds of wince.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm as bad as some people.
Yeah.
But anyway, she would say she was great. I loved her to death.
Yeah, and I guess and for a bit you played with Terry Clark. You played a little bit with her out on the road.
Now I'll tell you about the Terry Clark thing, and I've said this in the book. I should never have done this gig, and I cursed myself that I did it. I did it because I was broke.
Yeah.
Lesson to be learned there: go and take a day job instead of playing music you really don't want to play or relate to.
Yeah.
So anyway, I knew the bass player, and he said the guitar player was, I don't know, was leaving, or I don't quite remember. I said, "Well, I'm looking for a gig." Well, okay, so I get the gig, and then I got to sit down and try and learn Brent Mason stuff. Well, I can't play Brent Mason stuff. The way he plays, the way I play, it's just natural second nature.
Right.
And I tried, but I remember once out on the road, because I was the old fart in the band, and we all had our set lists. One time, I remember I misread the set list and I went to the next song ahead of everybody else. So I started playing one song and they're playing the song on the set list. So we all chuckled about it. But the next day, the set lists, my set lists are about this big. It was funny, but I liked Terry a lot. We had a lot of fun and giggling. She loved to arm wrestle me, and fortunately, she never did beat me. But I liked her. She was a character. I didn't like the music at all. I did it because I was broke, and they fired me, and I could not have been happier. Yeah. Couldn't have been happier. So their word to the wise, if you don't like the music, don't do it. It's not worth the aggravation, Yeah. Or it wasn't for me. Yeah.
So then I guess chronologically we kind of get up to Jamie Hartford, the son of John Hartford, and playing around town, like at Wolfie's and the different places that y'all played here. And I saw y'all, and there's a generation of players here in town that came in town in time to see you, with the Jamie Hartford Band and Guthrie Trapp and other guys that really have lots of memories about that. Yeah.
Well, it was a great band, and that band came together the same way Meal Ticket did, which was actually I went down to the Exit Inn for a beer with Dave Pomeroy, or either he was there. Anyway, we're having a beer, and Jamie was going to play there that night, and Jamie made the mistake of saying, "Do you want to sit in?" Oh yeah, because this was already a real pocket, and Jamie already had those great songs, and I think the bass player was guy who played with the Amazing Rhythm Aces. I can't think of his name.
Yeah.
Anyway, the night that I sat in with them, there was a sub bass player, Charlie. Oh, I can't think of his last name. The best stand-up bass player I've ever had the pleasure to listen to and play with. Talk about intonation, stunning. And I hold up, what's his name? The Swedish bass player, Pedersen, is it? Pedersen something?
Oh, I
and
don't
you
know.
listen to him, you listen to that guy playing stand-up bass with Joe Pass, and he's all over the damn place, pitch-wise. It's horrible, you know. And how is it that bass players and trumpet players get away with playing all those bad wrong notes? You know, a trumpet player, at the end of the song, you're going, if I did that, you're all over my ass, you know?
Right,
So,
right.
But where were we?
Yeah, so you're playing with Jamie Hartford, and Jamie had, you know, he had a great album called What About Yes that you played on, and played a bunch of great solos. Y'all did a live album, and you did a bunch of playing around Nashville. And by that point, you know, going to see you play, you were still playing your Tele, but you had this little BR1 Gibson amp, and
that was a gift as well, as I say.
And so that was like a late 40s Gibson amp that had like a field coil speaker on it, and it had like these, and you know, I remember it had three big knobs on the back of it, and this venting, and this, it was just a crazy looking 40s amp.
Mine was 1946 apparently, and it had a big G.
Yes.
The Gibson, but the G looked like the Gretsch G.
Yes.
Which it was, anyway, not that I cared about that, I just cared about the sound of it. And I think I would go into which would be the higher input, the microphone or what was the other one? There's only two plugs.
Instrument. It'd be instrument or microphone.
Yeah, instrument or microphone. I can't remember which one was the louder one, but that's the one.
Instrument's usually louder. Okay. Yeah.
That's where I certainly tested them, and that's where I would have plugged in. But so that's a 10-inch speaker, was it?
12, maybe a 12. Yeah, I think it was a 12.
Okay. Well, I remember somebody telling me, you know, be very careful with those field coil speakers, because the power's going through that magnet to drive the amp.
That's right.
And it will kill you stone dead if you touch it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't.
Good.
I didn't go anywhere near it. Well, yeah, it was the best amp I ever played. For small clubs, smaller gigs, and studio, of course. And I used to use the lab for the bigger gigs, you know, and half the time, you know, my sound check at gigs, you know, on the bigger gigs, everyone, you know, drums and banging around and all that, you know, I hated sound checks. And I'd be on the bus, and, you know, we'd have the walkie-talkies, and they go, okay, your turn. So I'd get up there, and all I ever played was the... Whoops. Can you hear that? Yeah, okay, done. You know, because, well, it was true. You know, what are you going to do with me? We're going to do what? No. And we all used to laugh about it, you know, sound crew, you know, down, 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 back to the bus. You know? Yeah. But yeah, sound checks.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they're necessary, but I ran away from them because I really didn't need to do one.
Yeah.
There was nothing, you know, there's the amp, here's the sound, done. Anyway.
Yeah, you're not, you know, and you're not using a bunch of pedals where you're changing like your gain level a bunch or your tone.
We're down to bare bones here, thankfully.
Yeah. Yes. So then after playing with Hartford for a while, then you kind of shifted, and you kind of moved away from playing out as much.
Well,
what happened?
Well, the Hartford Band, I'd been in the band for 3 years, and I don't think this is overly dramatic, but I always compared, the reason I picked up the guitar when I was 11 was because of the Jamie Hartford Band. I mean, obviously I didn't know it, but that band let me be the player. Jamie never told me what to play, and neither would I have listened. You know, I certainly didn't tell him what to play. You know, we just played, and it was great. And he had these great songs, and but that amp was just wonderful. And I know where it is, and I can buy it back if I want. So I know where all my stuff is.
Yeah, because part of this is that you got rid of the Lab series and the Gibson, and you sold your Rosewood board 68 Tele and other stuff, and kind of moved on to another chapter of your life.
I did, and I really don't remember much of what I was doing then. You know, I don't think I was playing that much. I know yeah, that's a bit vague there. I'm not quite sure what was going on. But the Hartford Band came to an end. Number one, I was no longer so enamored of Jamie's songs, and that's not a criticism. He's a great writer, but they didn't pique my interest like the stuff he had going when we first came together. You know, it was a different thing. Plus, Charlie Chadwick was the stand-up bass player. Charlie had moved on to other things, and we had Dave Rowe come in and play with us. You know, and Dave's a great rockabilly bass player, so it gave the band a slightly different feel. And I was already going, I don't know about this anymore. Well, and I have to preface this with, you know, Dave Pomeroy is a really, really old and good friend of mine. But I just never warmed to his bass playing. It was just, and there's nothing I haven't told Dave. I mean, you know, it was just too loud and too many notes. Mozart, if you remember the film, you know, too many notes, Mozart. But for me, it was, you know, my favorite bass player is Norbert Putnam, or one of them, you know, just right. Simple. I know he's not even playing, I don't think now. But, and so when Dave used to fill in on bass for you know, for Charlie when he couldn't make it or whatever it was, and the rest of the guys wanted to get Dave in. I said, no, I said, you know, what you're doing there is we don't need another lead player, certainly not on bass. We got Paco on the harp, Jamie and myself, and Paco's Hammond organ effect. You know, we were covered. Well, so anyway, I left, but I didn't. Dave was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but I went, oh no, because Dave just booms. It just booms, you know, and it took over the whole stage, and I didn't like it. So I handed in my notice, you know, which was readily accepted. So, you know, because Jamie and I were just like chalk and cheese, as we say in England, you know, two different ends of the spectrum. I mean, he likes to go hunting. I abhor hunting, you know, unless it really is for, you know, if you don't have any food and you're starving. You know. But so he's a good old country boy and I'm not, you know, and it was, the culture factor was never on the same level, you know, but I loved his stuff and his songs and his guitar player, great guitar player.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I leave because it's time to leave for whatever the reasons. And I just didn't bother. You know, I said, where am I going to find something like that with that kind of pocket and those kind of songs and that, you know, well, I'm probably not going to find it. So jokingly, I always said, and it was a joke, I said, you know, the only thing I can think that would replace this would be if I played second guitar for Ry Cooder and Jim Keltner, which is a joke, but that just says how highly I regarded Rick Lono, the drummer, and Jamie, because for me it would take Keltner and Jamie and Gouda to replace that magic. But it was tongue in cheek, you know. I was just hoping that they wouldn't call to, oh shit, now I've got to go and do it. Oh, now I've got to go and do the gig. I was just kidding, Jim.
It was just a joke.
No. But, you know, that was, so that came to an end, and then I just floated around. I can't remember much what I was doing, to be honest. I mean, the odd session, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a big gap there. No.
So let's, one of the, you know, of course, we've hit on it before, is just you play with a more aggressive, you know, touch, and you use bigger strings. And when most of the other guys were using, you know, really, you know, light gauge strings and a light touch, you were, you know, using a higher action and bigger strings. And like back in the day, you know, in that video that I did, I talked about the strings you used to use, which were like 10, 11, 15, 32, 42, 52, and now you use a little bit heavier than that.
Well, I jacked up the skinny ones quite a long time ago, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's 16, 12, 11. And the 16 and the 12 were as heavy and as light as I could go. Because if I wanted to bend the G string up a whole step and then play some other notes over on the B string without that note moving,
right,
and maintaining perfect intonation. And 17 would have been too heavy. It would have started to slip. You know, 6 and 15, I knew I could go a little heavier. And the heavier I could go, the happier I was.
Right.
You know, because, you know, I always jokingly said that, you know, you're playing guitar like a construction worker.
Right.
You know, it was that kind of, and I think I wrote in the book something about some smart ass line of, yeah, if the solo was really tough, I'd put on my hard hat.
Yeah. So, but then also you had to develop a kind of a technique of reinforcing your fingernails to play that aggressively and not just rip your nails to shreds. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, let me show you the nails if you can get.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. So
Certainly.
if I do this, you'll be able to see that there's kind of a lump.
Right.
And what I do, I'll show you what I do when I can find it. Because, you know, this may help people who have really weak nails. Well, I'll be damned.
Well, you can just describe it.
Well, that is too weird. So what I do is I would, you know, file the nail down. Boy, this is weird trying to do this. I'd file the nails down, and then, you know, to a length that was acceptable. This one is a little bit short now for some reason, this one. But I'd file them down, get them where I wanted to, and then, God, this is weird. So then I would.
Yeah, just hold it out, you know, like sideways. You know.
Yeah. So then, right. So then, boy, this is weird. So then I would just put glue, just a drop of glue on the side, you know, on the right, on the left side of the nail that's going to make contact with the string. And then with an emery board, I would dip the emery board into the acrylic powder, and then from about this height, gently shower this acrylic powder down onto the glue, you know, and then at some stage you're able to put your whole fingernail in the powder, and that, you know, after about 30 seconds, that's solid as rock. And, you know, then I would buff it down so it's nice and smooth, and then it'll roll off the strings. But I can't play without the nails on there.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I mentioned earlier that, I don't know if I did, but going into Abbey Road Studios to record what became NW8, which was supposed to be the answer, England's answer to area code 615.
Okay.
And they used the NW8 because that's, you know, Abbey Road's postal code. And we were going to go in the next day and cut this stuff. And the doors back then were really heavy doors, and they had these huge hinges at the top.
Yes.
And it ripped all 3 nails off. The day before, I was going to go in and play with this band that hopefully was going to be England's answer to area code 615. I couldn't have been more chuffed, as we say. So I got no nails, you know, and I really couldn't play. And I heard, it was many, 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 many years, much later on. I was already over here. And somebody found a copy of it. And I listened to it, and it sounded like, I don't know, it wasn't even mixed. It was just horrible. And I sent a note to Wayne Moss, because I'd met Wayne. I think I'd worked over at Cinderella at least once, I think. And I sent him a note, you know, saying, hey, I don't know if I ever told you, but I was in this band, NW8, blah, 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 you know. And I said, well, they just sent me the recording of it. Do you want to hear it? And, you know, I was telling him, I said, you know, I don't like it. I think it's dreadful. You know, it's horrible. It's embarrassing. I don't never want to listen to it again, you know. So I sent it to him, and he went, yeah, he was very kind. He said, well, I hear what you mean. He said, I didn't notice that you didn't have your nails. Well, that's a personal thing. But I said, well, look, if you want to keep it, hang on to it, mate, because I'll never play it again. You know, anyway, that's where the nail thing kicked in. I went, all right, that's enough of that.
Yeah.
You know, because I cannot play without them. And
Yeah.
I guess at the time I wasn't using glue. I guess I don't know quite how I was doing it. But the glue helped me really lean in and, you know, pull those strings hard. And,
Yeah.
you know.
And this is always a personal thing, but what have you, you know, it seems like you've always used little jazz picks. Are you still using those little?
Yeah, right here.
And you're even still using the old speed picks with the twist on the end.
Yeah, it's a 12-degree twist.
Yeah.
The idea being that it's twisted so that the twist, if you normally you hold a pick, it goes at an angle to the string, unless you do this with your hand. So, you know, he did that 12-degree to have the pick sit flush to the string.
Yeah. And you've used those picks since the early 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I found that I ran into Steve Zook, who made them originally, at a NAMM show. You know, I used to do loads of NAMM shows, you know, the exhibition and show in whatever, you know. And he gave me a box of them, you know, and I mentioned his name many times. And now Dunlop's got them, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Great picks. And it's funny, that tuner I had, the Sabine, I never saw anybody else with one of those. And it was the most simplest, best tuner, to my mind, in the world. Never saw anybody else with one. Well, this is a personal thing, of course.
Right.
I never saw anybody using these twisted picks. You know, I think it suits my twisted personality.
Yes.
I hope. Anyway. Yes. But yeah, I playing the bigger picks, I started using these tiny things because you're much closer to the strings.
Yeah.
Some big old lumpy thing, you know. Well,
yeah. Well, Ray, tell us with the children's book, and where can people pick that up if they want to pick one up?
Well, it's I guess I have to back up a bit. I sent Red a copy of the file, and then I sent him a copy of the book when I got it printed, you know. And he went on Facebook and started telling everybody about. And I'd also sent him the file of the autobiography. So he's on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, so I don't know what he said. suddenly I'm getting all these emails requesting to buy the book. And I went, well, which book? The Boy Who Would Be Birds or the autobiography? Because the autobiography is not in print.
Right.
They said, oh yeah, Red was raving about The Boy Who Would Be Birds, you know. So I actually have a little money sitting in a fresh PayPal account. But if anybody wants to buy the book, this is like Christopher Hitchens always pitching his books.
Yes.
Always good. If anybody wants to buy the book, there's an email address here. If anybody wants to buy a copy, I'll spell it for you. And this was the first, it's not my real name. It's just the name that sprang to mind. Ray Flackenhauser, RayFlackenhauser @protonmail.com.
Right.
So if you want one, shoot me an email.
All right. Well, we will also put that up on the screen too to make it
cool.
Easy. And
we'll just know that, you know, you and whoever's going to watch this, that, you know, the writing thing is to me now where I was when I first discovered guitar.
Yes.
You know, when it was like, oh, blinders on, that's it, game's up. You know, there will be nothing else.
Right.
And this is my creative outlet, and it's just so much fun. It's just, you know, there are no rules, you know, and I don't like following the rules anyway, you know. In fact, I sent this one publisher a note saying, the book publisher said, because I'd looked at a lot of them, you know, and they want to have you jump through all these hoops. So I sent a couple of them a note saying, look, I've got an idea. You know, you want all these writers to jump through hoops and send 2 paragraphs of this and a bio and a blah, 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 blah. You know, I said, I've got an idea. I said, look at the cover. And if the cover doesn't inspire you or pique your interest to go and read the first chapter, sending all that other crap to you would have been a waste of my time and yours. And I got lots of responses.
A ballsy response, yeah.
Well, you know, I have a dear friend who helped me with the book somewhat. She understands the book world. But she was telling me stories of when she would follow the strict rules of editing, and she, you know, and she ended up pulling her hair out, going nuts, and blew the whole thing off, you know. Whereas I would never do that, you know, and I've spoken to her. She said, yeah, don't follow the rules. You know, get outside that box that they talk about and, you know, be your own character. So that's, you know, that's what I'm, and fortunately there is no rush to get this thing published. I don't know whether I'm going to self-publish or traditional. They have this thing now called hybrid publishing. And that's where you pay to have it printed, you pay to have it stored, and pay to have it edited. And I've written back to them saying, so if you've got your money up front, what's the incentive for you to work this product? And then they come back with all the blah, 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 you know.
Right.
But as I say, fortunately, I'm in no rush to do it. And I've almost finished the second book.
Very nice. Well, Ray, I really appreciate you sitting down with me and getting to know what you're up to now and talking about, you know, your playing and your writing, and it's just a real treat and an honor. So thank you so much, Ray. I appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure, Zach. And I was just going to say, we never did speak about the baby powder.
Oh yes, the baby powder that you'd put on there to keep things smooth when you're playing. Yes, when you instead of sweating on the neck. Yeah.
Right, and the first time I had to have it, because I'm not a real hand sweater very much.
Yeah.
But I was working with Joe's son. We did a festival somewhere in mid-August in Georgia or wherever it was, and it was just dripping humidity.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, you know, and somehow I don't know why, there's a bottle of baby powder somewhere. I don't even know where I got it. And as soon as I put that on, oh man, that means I'm never, ever not going to be able to play without baby powder. And sure enough, it sat on the amp forever. And I would baby powder up 2 or 3 times a song. And it became really, really addictive. I don't use it so much now because I'm not doing that much. I don't really need it when I use the Focusrite, you know, for the little overdub stuff.
Yeah.
But it saved the day, I'm telling you. Of course, many a man has cursed me out, but you know, they tried it and then they got addicted.
Yes, and then you snap the strings and you have baby powder going everywhere.
That's right. I used to do that all the time. And I remember one day, I don't know what it was. I think I just put the baby powder on my hand or something, and I had mistakenly clipped the drummer's cymbal, and in the lights, this baby powder went all up, and it looked amazing. It
was a great lighting effect.
Yeah, it was, you know, and I think I probably tried to do it, you know, whenever I felt like it. But anyway, it was fun stuff. Well, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes. Well, it was a pleasure to be able to, you know, kind of let people know, you know, to remind people, and also, yeah, to know what you're up to now, and so that people can check out your, you know, the children's book, and we can look forward to your autobiography, which I'm looking forward to that.
Well, maybe you could show the cover.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll show
the public.
Yes, we will.
Because that. Now, I just had to say, my good friend Al Shipston, who I do the guitar overdubs for, and because he understands word and book, how it's all put together, he was able to put the book together for me in form, in Word. Otherwise, I'd still be banging around in Notepad. But yeah, I just want to say, you know, thanks to Al, because he put that book together, and we would never ever have it in this form if it hadn't been for Al, you know.
Yeah.
So thank you, pal.
Yes.
Anyway. Well, yeah, there you go. All right. Well, have a great rest of the day.
You too, Ray. Thank you so much. All right.
My pleasure, Zach. See you, pal. Bye, everybody.